What's going on, fantasy football fans? I'm your host, AskTheBrain, and you're watching The Couch. We have a juicy video for you guys to kick off the 2015 draft, get you pumped up and get you ready. In this video, I'm going to reveal sleepers for every position, including defense and kicker. I'll also let you guys in on who I am avoiding in most of my drafts and who I'm not targeting. And lastly, we'll talk about some of the top candidates to be bust of the year. Let's start off by defining what a sleeper is. A player that exceeds expectations, provides more value than their draft position indicates, and is being drafted later than they should be. That's what a sleeper is. So a bust is the complete opposite. A bust is when you draft a player too early and they put up numbers way below what they're projected to put up. Enough of these Webster Dictionary games. Let's go to my top 10 quarterback sleepers. Marcus Mariota is solely on this list because of the rush yards he'll provide. We didn't see any of this in the first preseason game, but I'm sure they're going to implement some designed run plays for the quarterback, and he'll also be scrambling. Number 9 is Eli Manning. If ODB is healthy, he'll put up big numbers. He'll be inconsistent. He'll throw picks, but he'll also put up big numbers for you. Number 8 on my list is Tony Romo. Now that DeMarco Murray is gone, he's going to need to throw the ball more. He also has some good matchups where he's going to play offenses that put up a ton of points. He's going to need to throw the ball even more. A lot of fantasy owners that do their homework realize this as well. So he's not quite the steal of the draft, but a great value quarterback pick. Number 7 is Jameis Winston. A rookie, he'll make rookie mistakes. He's actually being drafted, people say a little earlier than he should be, but I think it's a great upside QB2 for your team. Number 6 is Sam Bradford. We all know the deal with this guy. He's going to be a great quarterback in Philadelphia, if he stays healthy, and that's a big if. In leagues where you draft 2 quarterbacks, not necessarily have to start 2, but leagues that you can draft 2 with a deep bench, and leagues with an IR spot, he has more value. And I think he's a great flyer pick for a QB2. Number 5 is Teddy Bridgewater. Just like Bradford, he's not going to be your QB1, but with Adrian Peterson in the game, he's going to be very efficient. Number 4 is Tom Brady. Okay, we know he suspended the first 4 games. He also has a bye for week 4. So what you have to do when you draft Tom Brady is to draft another quarterback. If you're looking at those first 4 games, the best quarterback to fill in is Tony Romo. They make for a great pair to draft. If you're looking for the best overall quarterback to maybe play a QBVC, which is quarterback by committee, you play him according to the matchup. Matt Ryan is the best quarterback to have for the entire season. But you're going to have to spend 2 mid-round draft picks to get both Ryan and Brady. Some I likely wouldn't do, but I'm giving you that option. Now, the best pairs for these 2 guys for cheap draft picks, if you're looking to take a quarterback to match with Brady in the early rounds, is Colin Kaepernick or Sam Bradford. If you need more pairings, make sure you go to fantasycouch.com. Read the article about QB sleepers. I have pairings for every single one of these names I'm going through right now. Number 3 on the list, Matt Ryan, a guy that's going to have to throw the ball a lot. Last year, he was terrible and he was great. Some games he did nothing, some games he did great. So he has Julio Jones, that's a big plus. The defense isn't great, that's a big plus. He's going to be throwing the ball a lot. What sucked last year was that his offensive line was hurt. So if his offensive line could stay healthy, they'll probably be mediocre, which is good enough for Matt Ryan to put up a ton of points. Number 2 is Matthew Stafford. I was really close to putting him at number 1. He's the steal of the draft as far as quarterbacks are concerned. I truly believe he's going to be a top 10 QB, but he's being drafted as QB 13 and sometimes QB 14 or later. He didn't have a great year last year, but Megatron was hurt. If Megatron can stay healthy, he's got a great number 2 wide receiver, Golden Tate, who could be a number 1 on a lot of other teams. So he's got Tate, he's got Calvin Johnson, and he's also got Theo Reddick and Amir Abdullah. Now my number 1 QB sleeper is Drew Brees. I'm actually not head over heels over this guy because a lot of people are drafting him in round 3 and round 4 in leagues. And that's where it's not going to work out for you. Where it's going to work out for you is if you can get him at the end of round 5 or in round 6, which he does fall that far. So if you can get him there, that's going to be a great pick. Put it like this. He's a 5th round pick with 4th round value. And a bonus guy I have for you guys is Carson Palmer. If this guy can stay healthy, he'll be a solid quarterback. He is perfect in dual QB leagues and also a decent QB2 backup for your team. And let's go to my top 9 running back sleepers. For number 9, I have Dan Herron. Now this guy is not going to be that great. He's also being drafted early in some leagues, but some leagues he's being slept on. Frank Gore is 32, and this guy's going to see a little bit of time. So I think he's a good pick towards the end of your draft, but that's why he's number 9 and not higher than that. Number 8, I have James White. He's a great pick in deep leagues that are PPR. Number 7, Lance Dunbar. Now this guy's a great sleeper, but you have to keep an eye on what's going on in Dallas. What's up with McFadden? What's up with Joseph Randle? Now if we play out the scenario, this is how it's going to likely go as of right now. Joseph Randle's going to be the starter. Darren McFadden's going to get hurt playing video games or something stupid like that. And Dunbar is going to be more than a pass catching back. He'll be really good. He's a good sleeper in PPR leagues. Number 6 is Roy Halou. He will not be slept on in a lot of leagues, especially PPR. But in some PPR leagues, he will be slept on, and that's where you got to capitalize. And that's pretty much goes for everybody on my list. If you draft a sleeper too early, he's no longer a sleeper because he won't produce that value. If you draft a bust, so a quote-unquote bust really late in the draft, later than he's going, then he may not be so much of a bust. So Roy Halou, he's being slept on in some leagues. This is why he's so good. Trent Richardson, he's not competition at all. Zero competition. Latavius Murray, yeah, he's going to be the star of that team. I like him. But Roy Halou, I think he'll be a little bit more than just a pass-catching back, just a third down back. So in PPR leagues, that's a great sleeper. I really like Lamar Miller, and in my 12-man league that I had a while ago, I was able to get him at the very end of the 3rd round. Actually, the 11th pick of the 3rd round, which is great. So now owners are drafting him early in the 3rd. So that's not, that's about where he should go. So if you can get him in the mid 3rd round or late 3rd round, that's a great spot, and that'll be a good sleeper for your team. Number 3, I have Jonathan Stewart. He won't be getting a ton of touchdowns, but he'll get a ton of touches, a lot of rushing attempts, and even a lot of catches this year. D'Angelo Williams is gone. The only question mark with this guy is if he can stay healthy, and that's a risk I'm willing to take for a running back. Number 2, I have LeGarrette Blount. This guy is going to be great. The only bad thing you got going for this guy is Bellatrix, but I think this year we have a good idea of what Belichick is going to do. LeGarrette Blount, 1st down, 2nd down. He's going to get a ton of carries. He's going to be the real RB1. To back him up, we got Jonas Gray. And the pass catching back is likely going to be James White. Now, it is Belichick, and there is a risk. My number 1 sleeper is for PPR leagues, Theo Riddick. Now, Joique Bell can't really stay healthy, and you got Amir Abdullah. He's going to be a beast this year. People are catching on to him, but wow, is that guy talented. But I got Theo Riddick as a great PPR flyer. He's going undrafted in just about every league. So you can get him late round, and that's going to be a great RB5 for your team. And some other running backs you could consider as sleepers. I got David Cobb. If Bishop Sankey has a terrible year, starts playing like he did last year, then David Cobb is sure to take over. Doug Martin, he's sort of a boomer bust type player. He's going to either be benched, hurt on the Bucks, he's not going to really play, and that's when you're going to have to drop him, unfortunately. Or he's going to be the RB1 for the Bucks. And just about any RB1 on any team is worth a start on your fantasy team. And a guy to keep an eye on is Jared Hayne, that rugby player. Definitely don't draft this guy, but just keep an eye on him, especially in leagues that reward points for kick returns. This guy just looked amazing in preseason, and I don't know if he's going to ever play running back this year at all, but he may return kicks, and if he does play running back, that's a good guy to watch. So, I'm not telling you to draft this guy, but definitely keep an eye on him. If you want someone that's a sleeper, he's more of a coma, but he's an exciting player. Definitely watch out for Hayne. Wide receiver position is so deep. The wide receivers are so deep, so deep. Yeah, everybody knows, and everybody knows about wide receivers. That's why it's so important to get a top-tier wide receiver and then match them with some great value picks. Here are my top 5 wide receiver sleepers. Number 5, I have Brian Quick. He used to be a super sleeper. Now fantasy owners are catching on, so he'll likely won't slip too far in your draft, but he's great at your 5th wide receiver or something, late in the draft. He could be the number 1 wide receiver and number 1 target on the Rams. Number 4, I have Brandon Marshall. The Jets, man, they're a funny team. They seem to be doing well in the offseason, and then all this crazy stuff happens. But Brandon Marshall, he's had success with all these other quarterbacks, Cutler, Henney, I think Matt Moore even, Kyle Orton, Josh McCown, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. He's always been really, really good. So I got Brandon Marshall as number 4. That's why I didn't rank him higher, because he's on the Jets. You know, he's getting a little bit older, some injuries in the past. But I really like this guy. I would definitely target him if you can get him at a great pick. Steve Smith, I have this guy as a low-risk guy. You know, he's not going to blow you away. Definitely doesn't have wide receiver 1 potential or anything like that. But I think he's going to be the number 1 targeted guy in Baltimore. Number 2, I have Anquan Boldin. This is the go-to guy for Kaepernick. He's going to be good. I think he's going to put up very similar numbers to what he did last year, which is decent, at least 1,000 yards. And the number 1 sleeper I have is Vincent Jackson. He was targeted 143 times last year, and he's bound to catch some of those this year. I think he's going to be really good, a sleeper. I like Mike Evans. You know, I don't target Mike Evans usually, but it's because I'd rather just get Vincent Jackson 5 rounds later. I think he's going to be really good this year. Some more wide receivers that could be considered sleepers are Eddie Royal, Marcus Colston, and Stevie Johnson. Some deep league flyers that you should take notice of: Cecil Shorts, Nick Toon, who is a good handcuff for Brandon Cook's owners in those 20-round deep leagues, Devin Funchess, Marvin Jones, Josh Huff. You know, in case Aguilar doesn't work, just like I mentioned before, if you're in a 20-round league and you draft Nelson Aguilar, then Josh Huff is a decent handcuff. Just in case something happens to him, it doesn't work out with the rookie, you have Josh Huff. For the top 10 sleeper tight ends, I have Ladarius Green at number 10. Now this can work out for you well for the first 4 games when Gates is suspended. But when he comes back, we don't know what's going to happen. So there's risk there that you may have to drop Ladarius Green. Number 9, I have Eric Ebron. I don't see this guy putting up huge numbers, but you know, you can take a chance on him at tight end too. There's just too many targets over there in Detroit for him to really get anywhere close to 1,000 yards. Jordan Reed, another guy who has injury problems, but if he stays healthy, he'll be a good tight end. Zach Ertz suffered a groin injury, so make sure you keep tabs on that. Kyle Rudolph is being undervalued in a lot of drafts, but I have a feeling that's not going to last. I think his stock is going to rise pretty soon. And now that Ertz is hurt, and Larry Donnell is hurt as well, I think his stock is going to rise. So, you know, I like Kyle Rudolph, but only if you can get him later than his ADP. Same exact thing with Tyler Eifert. I think a lot of people are going to be catching on to him as well, so watch out where you draft him. Austin Seferian-Jenkins is a great breakout candidate. Other people do know this as well. I put him as a high risk, high reward type of guy. Heath Miller, that's a low risk tight end. I think of him as a poor man's Jason Witten. You can get Heath Miller really late for so cheap, and he'll put up decent numbers. I think he'll be fairly consistent and put up decent numbers. Basically enough points for you not to lose. So if you have other guys to target, you don't want to draft a tight end early or even in the mid rounds, Heath Miller is your guy. That brings us to our number 2 guy, Jason Witten. He'll be good. I think he'll put up even better numbers than last year. As I talked about, Romo's going to throw the ball more. He trusts Jason Witten. This is going to be a good guy, not a super high ceiling guy. I mean, the only way he'll have a high ceiling is if he can catch a ton of touchdowns. I don't know if that's going to happen when Dez Bryant's still in the lineup. And my number 1 sleeper, just hold your breath here, it's Vernon Davis. Talk about high risk, high reward. This guy is extremely high risk. Now you can get him for cheap. He had a disaster year last year. Basically from week 2 and beyond, he didn't do anything. He averaged less than 1.5 receptions a game from week 2 and beyond. If he does have a comeback year, that's going to be a great tight end for you. So I like Vernon Davis as a tight end 2 with tight end 1 upside. But you got to realize if you draft this guy, you may have to drop him week 5. That's how bad he might be. But hey, there's always a chance he can be back to form. Some tight ends to keep an eye on, especially in deep leagues. Larry Donnell, he has an Achilles injury. Garrett Graham, I'm starting to think their quarterback situation in Houston isn't so bad. If he's the number 1 tight end, he could be decent. Virgil Green, maybe there's 2 tight end sets that Denver uses a lot this year. And here are my top 3 sleeper defenses. A lot of people like the Rams this year, but I don't like to reach for the Rams defense. I compare them to the Cardinals defense. Now the Rams have a better D-line, but the Cardinals have a better overall defense. Their schedules are almost identical. If I had to pick one, I think the Cardinals' schedule is a little bit easier, especially in terms for their defense. So I like taking the Cardinals 2, 3, even you can even maybe get them 4 rounds after the Rams, because people are reaching for the Rams defense in leagues. Let's be real. My number 2 sleeper defense is the Miami Dolphins. Now, I tried to find out why they're ranked so low. I couldn't really find out too much information. I think they have a decent schedule. They got Ndamukong Suh, a good overall defense. I think their offense is going to be more consistent, make less mistakes. I really like the Dolphins defense. You can get this defense way later than those top 5 defenses are getting picked usually. I wouldn't wait too long though, but you can get them later. And my number 1 sleeper defense is the Houston Texans. Even though they're ranked top 3 on most rankings for defenses, they're not always being drafted in the top 3 defenses. So keep that in mind. That makes them more of a sleeper if you can get them after the 3rd defense is picked. Now, there's a couple reasons why I have them as number 1. First of all, the Texans, which we all know is a decent defense, they have an amazing schedule. And you're probably saying, oh, they play the Colts twice. Andrew Luck, he'll probably do some damage against them, but he'll also have a couple turnovers in each game. And for the part you've all been waiting for, my top 5 sleeper kickers. That's sarcasm for you guys. My number 5 sleeper kicker is Chandler Catanzaro. He's going undrafted, and I have him ranked as the 15th best kicker, so you can definitely take this guy with your last pick. Blair Walsh comes at number 4. Number 3, Nick Folk. He's really going undrafted. He's a good kicker, and you can definitely get this guy with your last pick, which is where you should be picking a kicker anyway. My number 1 sleeper kicker is Connor Barth. He's on the Denver Broncos and is being drafted as kicker number 8 in leagues. I think easily he's going to be a top 5 kicker. Now here's my list of players that I usually avoid in drafts. Jordan Matthews. Now I don't hate this guy, but a lot of people are drafting him early. I would personally rather wait and draft Nelson Aguilar and Josh Huff. Take a risk on those guys. You can get those guys much later. They have more upside. Now Melvin Gordon does have a lot of potential, but I usually avoid him in drafts because a lot of people are drafting him like he's a high-end RB2. It's just too much risk. If you're in early drafts, I wouldn't reach for him. I really need to see how the rest of the preseason pans out if he can prove that he's good in pass protection. Danny Woodhead's going to be a big part of that passing game as far as running backs go. And I think Brandon Oliver will be used a little bit as a change of pace back every now and then too, to bite into his carries. Now Todd Gurley, I do not hate this guy, but he is a huge injury risk. And if you do draft Todd Gurley, you have to draft Trey Mason. So now we're talking about 2 mid-round picks you spent on 2 Rams running backs. So it's best to avoid Gurley unless you can get him in the later rounds. In leagues with deep benches and leagues with IR spots, he has a lot more value. So keep that in mind as well. Andre Johnson, one of my favorite receivers in the league. I owned him in fantasy plenty of times. I like him as a receiver. The problem is people are drafting him in round 3 and even earlier, which is just ludicrous. I like to take him in round 7. Now he actually does fall to round 6 sometimes. So taking him in round 6 or 7 is not bad. The problem is when you take him in round 3 or 4. It's just too early. And sticking with the Colts, we got Frank Gore. Now, when I heard Frank Gore was on the Colts, I was juiced. I wrote him down. I wrote down in my notes I'll make this video. He's gonna be my sleeper, maybe my number 1 sleeper. Then I found out that people are drafting him in the 2nd round. What the heck? I thought he was going to be a 5th rounder. That's where I would draft him. I see him as a RB2, not a low-end RB1. People are drafting him way too early. I like to take Frank Gore round 5. That will never happen in any draft. People are drafting him in round 3. So that's why I avoid him just about every draft. Now, Matt Forte and Marshawn Lynch. I'm not going to say these guys are bust. What I would bet on, though, is that they will decline either this year or next year. I usually tend to stay away from these 2 guys. Now, if I can get them way later, like late in the 2nd round or something, that's a good spot to get them. That likely doesn't happen in most leagues. Julius Thomas, a guy that's very injury prone, and he went from the Broncos to the Jags. Need I say more? Sammy Watkins. You drafted him last year and was like, oh, there's one rookie wide receiver I'm drafting this year, in 2014. It's going to be Sammy Watkins. That didn't work out for you. All the other rookie wide receivers did great. He did so-so. That's because he's on the Bills, and he's still on the Bills, so I avoid him in most drafts. I usually avoid Eric Decker. Now, it's all the information I find online is they're not high on Brandon Marshall, and they're high on Eric Decker. I don't get this. He's the number 2 wide receiver on the Jets. How good could he possibly be? Now, he's not terrible, like I'm saying, but a lot of people draft him as like a low-end wide receiver 2 or something, and I just don't get that. Why reach for Eric Decker? There's a ton of other wide receivers out there you can get. And I almost always stay away from all Cleveland Browns running backs and all Jacksonville Jaguars running backs. That brings me to our next section, the top candidates for busts. TJ Yeldon. People that already had their draft and drafted him likely are kicking themselves right now because his stock is going down. You can likely get him later. He's on the Jaguars, and word is he may not be the workhorse over there. He may split carries with other running backs like Denard Robinson, for instance. And the other guy I have as a bust for this year is a guy that I actually really like. I owned him last year, is Jeremy Hill. Now, he's a great running back, and he's going to put up monster numbers. The thing is he's being drafted as a 12th overall pick in a lot of leagues, and I just can't do that. I'm not taking him as a 12th overall pick. You got guys like Antonio Brown, even Gronkowski, Julio Jones. I'm drafting Julio Jones over Jeremy Hill. There's just no way I'm doing that. I'm getting my top elite running back. I don't consider him a tier 1 running back, or I'm getting an elite wide receiver before I take him. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me anywhere. You can leave a comment below and ask me. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, but wherever you ask, make sure you use hashtag AskTheBrain. Now, I have a question for you. Just put one guy down. Leave a comment below. Put one guy down. Who's going to be the biggest bust at the running back position? I want to know what you guys think. Just name one guy. I'll let you know what I think about him. And that about wraps up this video. Make sure you guys watch this video where I reveal my top 10 handcuffs to target in drafts. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go to fantasycouch.com for more sleepers and busts. I get a little bit more intricate there with the numbers, and I show you guys some more pairings for those quarterbacks I mentioned. I'll see you guys on the next video.